Have you ever wondered why some habits stick while others fade away? Or how small changes in your daily routine can transform your life? Well, in today's episode, we dive into the intriguing world of habits, personal growth, and the art of balancing work and play. From the joy of reading for fun to the power of slowing down, we discuss practical strategies like habit stacking and the role of awareness in creating lasting change. So join us as we explore how to live more intentionally and take charge of your habits and therefore your life, one small step at a time. I remember when I did my chartership year, I spent a whole year just aggressively reading non-fiction books and really heavy stuff. And I just got to the point where I was like, I can't even enjoy reading anymore because I was reading to, get something from it, not just the enjoyment of reading. So that's funny enough, that's something I'm taking into this year actually, is trying to just read a bit more for the enjoyment and get into reading novels a bit more.
The way you frame that reminds me of an expression. I have no idea where I heard it from, but this is like I'm going to say it's a proverb, but it's when play has a purpose, it becomes work. And so as soon as you was reading for your chartership and focus on reading non-fiction, it stopped being play and started being work.
Play versus work. Who else has said that as well? It's I feel like
Alan Naval.
Well, Naval said
Alan
something like that. Yeah. Anna Watts and Naval, they've both said something similar around kind of. It's almost like that flow state, right? It's like play should just happen.
And you know what's really interesting as well? Even Pepsi, the Pepsi company, I'm pretty sure they did an experiment with littering. Where and it's the same why you see, McDonald's has a target in the bin to throw it. It's because as soon as you make something fun, you make it a game, people engage with it. People do it more. And if you think about physical exercise and sports, a lot of people hate physical exercise, but as soon as it becomes fun, they start doing it, and that's when they start learning because it's fun, it's exciting.
That actually reminds me of another book I read last year, which was Atomic Habits. And actually one of the things around trying to learn or to do that is going back to that point of play and actually making it fun. In the first place, can you just make something fun and to enjoy it instead of this whole forced agenda of trying to, like I did, right, with that non-fiction, just trying to bring it in. What was it? It was like there's these basically the steps. Have you read the book?
I haven't read Atomic Habits, but I'm familiar with the general principles.
It's a really interesting one because there's another book that I've read a lot. In fact, it's on my shelf.
I can't even read.
It's called The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg, right? And that's the science behind habits. Uh-huh. But then The Power of Habit is another really interesting book because that's kind of the power of habit is, instead of the science, it's a lot more of actionable and tangible steps of how you can go from that. And sorry, just because when you said make it fun, books and that, it all jumped to that. It's January, so it is habit month.
It's habit month. Time to drop a habit or maybe pick one up.
Reading.
What habit? Reading. That's the habit you're going to pick up.
Was that the question you're going to ask? Is what am I picking up
for?
Yeah, definitely reading. Like I said, I think I want to get. It's not just reading though, right? Because I've definitely back into reading heavily, but reading more just fiction and for that enjoyment, getting learning to play again and just read and enjoy. Expanding cooking more and more. That's definitely a part with the new adventure that's coming up.
The new adventure.
Side quests.
We were born to dilly-dally, listeners, and that's what we're going to do.
Full-time side quests are commencing in an undisclosed period of time. The countdown will be revealed in due course.
What we're not telling you is that these aren't side quests. These are the main quests.
That's it. Dude, that's when you know when you're on a good path, right? When your side quests become the main quests.
It's true.
But sorry, going back to what you said about habits. I think that's it's more changing, I think, that habit, right? It's not necessarily picking it up, but going and reading a bit more novels. I think something I want to get back to, and it's more just because after the shoulder injury last year, is back to getting more active, not just walking the dog, right, but actually just around sports, back towards the gym, that kind of, to me, this is very much a health conscious year, I guess, in a way, of brain, body, focusing on that. Probably to do with the fact that there's this hypothetical deadline of 30.
It's funny. Well, yeah, I don't know why, but the number 30 seems to bring on a number of people's existential dread. So,
dude, I know. But what about you? And you, anything you're changing or picking up this year?
Well, aside from the number 30, I'm picking up. Well, I suppose what am I trying to focus on? I think I have the inverse desire at the moment. It's slowing down, because at the moment, well, you know me, I read anything, I sit there and I work out all the time. I'm always doing something. And I'm always like, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing, and the next thing. I'm running around like Sonic the Hedgehog, just going crazy. And actually, this year, and I was really... Sorry, go on.
No, so I'm just laughing. That's going to have to be the thumbnail for this episode, just Sonic the Hedgehog running around.
Just in a ring, just going... Not going anywhere. It's just running around. Yeah. I'm
going to AI and superimpose your face on it, though. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah. Sega might come after you. So yeah, for me, it's actually wanting to slow down, to think more, in the sense of actually having the space to think, and I suppose also having the energy and not feel burnt out, not feel gassed out from all the running I do. So I suppose that's what my habit that I'm trying to pick up is knowing when to take those breaths and relax.
Dude, but that's that's a big one to unpack, right? Actually, because I definitely have had similarities with that post my chartership, of you're just constantly on this drive to achieve, succeed, and you're kind of on this. It's such a used term, but I get why it's so used. Is this hamster wheel, right? Mm-hmm. And you're just not coming off it. You're just running around, grinding, and. Burnout and stress are one of those weird ones in a way, right? Like if you just break your leg, there's like a bang, instant reality, and there's a lot of pain, right? But things like burnout, stress, those kind of things that you've just talked about, they can easily creep up on you in a way. So I think that's a really good one to take into the year of just slowing down a little, and just kind of. Yeah, I like that. Just slowing down a little and just being a little bit more present, maybe?
I don't think it's present, no. I think Sun Tzu says it best in The Art of War, because he talks about energy. And one of the things I think he sets out quite well, and I could be wrong, I'd have to go back and double check, but it's these ideas of energy. So there's positive energy, there's negative energy, and there's neutral energy. So negative energy is when you're taking something away. So you're taking something. Positive energy is when you're giving something. You're constantly giving it out. And then the neutral energy is where you're not doing anything. It's just there. You're just there existing with it. And I suppose what I've noticed is I'm doing a lot of giving, maybe in my job or maybe just in other aspects of my life. And actually there comes a point where, hold on a minute, sometimes you just need to be stopping and doing that neutral energy. So you're just maintaining, just being there. And you're not necessarily taking either. You're just existing. So that's what I'm going to try and build into my life.
That's a good one, though, because it is. We can easily just focus. I think, we talked about in episode 1 of success and failure, that there is times to really drive, but there is also therefore that inverse of kind of, of just slowing down a little bit and that. So yeah, that's a good change. Anything else you're looking to come into the year?
I'm getting absolutely jacked, which is in contrast with my earlier habit. No, nothing like that. Just seeking to maintain and just be around.
Just be around. Well, being around, right? Actually, that's I can relate to that. It's reinvesting in friendships and spending time with people. I think it's something we take for granted, especially when they're closer by. Yeah. So no, I think there's a lot to be said for that fitness, and moving through that way. I was just thinking of what we were just talking about there, New Year books and other things, and I was trying to think in my head how I would describe what a habit was, because we've talked a lot about conscious there in a way of kind of things that we're aware that we want to change, right? But I guess in that way, therefore, my mind, a habit is something that you probably repeat frequently or infrequently, but it's something that is repeated, right? But actually, you might not be aware of it. I think the most obvious example, which I remember from Charles Duhigg's book, is you don't really think about putting your car into reverse nowadays. You just do it. But if you cast your mind back to when you learned to drive, it's probably different for different people, but how much like conscious mental effort you'd have to do to bring the car, well, in our case, driving manuals, it's different from where you are in the world, but, you know, putting the car into that neutral, driving it across to where you are reverse and then engaging it. To me, that's probably how I'd describe it. How would you describe a habit?
Well, I suppose it's not too dissimilar. Really, when I think about a habit, I think about my favourite psychologist, Daniel Kahneman, and he talks a lot about these two systems that we have operating. So you have your system 1 and you have your system 2. And I think a habit is realistically related to your system 1. So it's that unconscious, if you want to use the word to describe it as unconscious, it's that stuff that you just do automatically. And realistically, we do that because they're efficient. It's efficient to be like that sometimes. It comes from a useful place, because if you had to stop and think about every single thing you were doing, you'd never get anything done.
That's exhausting.
Exactly. It's painful. Who's got time to be doing that? As I said, I'm rushing around like Sonic the Hedgehog. I've got places to be. Exactly. So it's that kind of balance is kind of not too dissimilar to what you're saying, really. And they can be useful, and I think that's the other thing. Habits can be really useful as well as being harmful.
Yeah, or harmful, definitely. It's funny though, because I think even regardless of they're helpful or harmful, right? Actually understanding that it is a habit sometimes. I remember talking to harmful once. Actually, you know, the stress of a long day, right, from running around, you're like, oh, I'll just have a quick drink, and soon that goes from, you know, here and there to almost every night of the week of, I just have a beer to take the edge off. That's been a tough day. You know, everyone's got different vices, right? We've talked about vices before, but I think it's to me, in the way I definitely learned to observe and pick a lot of those up, right, was the kind of the routine that's in Charles Duhigg's book around cue, routine, and then the reward of a habit, right? And you know, we talked about phones. I think this is probably a good one to pick back up on, right? But the cue is like your phone, you feel your phone buzz and notification. The instant thing, you're not even going to think about it, right? You just pick up your phone. And that's kind of that routine. And therefore you almost get that little dopamine hit when you read the message or the notification or the atrocious meme that someone sent you.
Yeah, you're talking a lot about behaviorism, which is a whole study of psychology around sort of, one, building in behaviors that you want repeated over and over again, reinforcement and association. And part of that cycle is, you know, you have a trigger, you pair it with a stimulus, that trigger, and you pair it with a certain reward or outcome. Maybe it's desired or undesired, whatever it is. And you just repeat that over and over again. And we all fall into those. And you've probably heard the expression, we're creatures of habit.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. Most, like all mammals, we all form habits. And that's what B.F. Skinner spent his life kind of demonstrating.
Oh, really? I don't know B.F. Skinner at all, actually.
He's a behaviorist.
Is he?
Yeah. And that's kind of his field of study. He was one of the earliest people who began to explain kind of how we associate certain stimuli with certain things and how we go on to behave towards them and how we can condition our behaviors. And that example you gave of the phone, you feel it ring. That's the trigger. That's the stimulus. You pick it up. You see that there's a horrible meme from Josh, awful meme from Josh, and you feel good. You get a reward, and then it happens over and over again, and you become conditioned. You hear the phone ring, you rush to pick it up, and it becomes automatic. So that's kind of what B.F. Skinner and a lot of these other behaviorists sought to do.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense because there's so many examples of that in a way, and it's interesting actually in that book, Charles Duhigg's book. This is oversimplifying away, but that our bodies to that point of how exhausting it would be for us thinking the whole time is we're trying to simplify and just, not be lazy in a way, but the body not have to think, right? It's just rely on those things to trigger.
Well, it reminds me of my favourite expression. Efficiency is just clever laziness. And that's the thing. Our bodies are very clever because they want to make these processes and this thinking so efficient. That's why we have heuristics, cognitive biases, and kind of all these ways of thinking is so that we can be as quick and responsive as possible. That's how we've evolved over millions of years, to be responsive, to be efficient, and to do things. And it's when that starts to come into the modern world with all these exciting things and all these new developments, that old way of being starts to maybe cause some problems.
And I guess that goes to then talks about environment, doesn't it? Right? Actually, of how I was just thinking what you were just saying about the changing, right? That reinforcement and how environments have changed through this different reinforcement of Well, I'm trying not to talk about social media because we talk about it quite a lot on this.
Well, to be honest, I think social media is one of the biggest ones that we can all relate to because, even on TikTok, what we were talking about, we make TikTok to catch people and start to reinforce the thing that we want. And that sounds awful, but that's how social media works. It's designed to hook you in and reinforce engagement over and over and over again. And I think, if you start seeing all habits a bit like that, you might begin to go, actually, what else am I doing that's reinforced and has been conditioned in me? And it comes with your magic word. I'm not going to say the magic word, but you've got to begin.
I've got so far into this, I nearly slipped in the first 30 seconds. But just to clear up a point that you made about the hooks that we're landing, right? We're here to help people live more intentionally. That's the hook that we're trying to pull you in here, everyone, right? With the social media and other things. We want to give you some tools that you can take away, right? And help to live more intentionally. So just full disclosure on that one.
Yeah, but that doesn't change the fact of what it is. And we can be honest about that. You want, and that's how conditioning works. All kind of conditioning begins to work like that to some degree. You either feel good, you either want to engage with something pleasurable, or you want to avoid something unpleasurable. And, maybe it's a negative emotion. So like you said, you're tired and you're stressed after work. You want to push that away. So you might drink some more, or you might, do something else. And it's thinking about actually what's happened here. Have I been conditioned to do this response to this certain stimulus or trigger or difficult situation? What are my triggers and stimuli, basically? So then
I'll say it, right? To change a habit, you need to become aware of the habit.
21 minutes in. 21 minutes in. We got him.
We got him. We could make this into a drinking game, couldn't it? How many times does Ollie
Let's not start forming awful habits.
It's I've been working so hard to remove words like and but and removing those habits, and I'm forming this other one of just the A word.
Awareness. Yeah, he means awareness. That's what he means by A word.
Yes, sorry, yes. Yes.
I hope.
But yeah, that awareness, then understanding that kind of reinforcement, I guess. The other one, this is a crazy one, right? And this is, I think, was probably the most vivid one to me, and different people as they look at and kind of becoming aware of their own habits pick up different ones, right? But the one in the book that Charles Duhigg kind of references is around the need, like the feeling of being hungry. And it's actually something that's really helped me lose a lot of weight. So there's two ways that this kind of plays in. But when you're in the office, he'd sit there and it gets to a point in the day where it goes, oh, kind of hungry and fancy a snack, right? And actually, some of the science that he'd read suggested that sometimes that's actually not the fact that you're hungry. You might just be thirsty, for instance. And actually, therefore, maybe trying to drink some water when you feel hungry and then waiting 15 minutes to see is one of them. But the other one he noticed as well was that actually in the afternoon after he'd had his lunch, he still sometimes would then feel hungry, right? And that wasn't necessarily to do with what we're eating. I'm not focused on that. But it was more actually the body was kind of almost asking for a break in a way. It's like, just get up and go and have that cookie. When actually what he found was if they went and did a walk round the block or the office with one of his colleagues, no longer crave that cookie. So it's amazing how these same cues, right, you can get an equal reward from that same cue in a way. And it's just changing that routine in the middle that is actually the bit that you kind of want to focus on it, because that reinforcement, as you mentioned, is just keeps over and over and over again, gets to the point where it does become subconscious and you're not even aware you're doing it.
And I think it's important at this moment to actually outline we're not necessarily talking about physical addictions per se. We're not talking about if you're a smoker. We're not talking about if you're maybe struggling with alcohol addiction and things like that. We're talking very, very specifically around, I suppose, behaviors that develop, like cravings with snacking, things like that, and how that might relate to other things. Of course, those two things are a bit separate. They're in this. I always say they're in the same family, but they're separate in some regards, and they have physical consequences depending on what it is. But it's a really good point that you're making there.
Yeah, definitely. Something you mentioned there, stacking. Were you talking about habit stacking?
I wasn't, but please go on. Tell me what habit stacking is.
Oh, habit stacking. The reason I'm pausing is because compounding kind of feels kind of comes into this, but it's around momentum, right? And I guess this is something which comes from the other book, which is Atomic Habits, and I'm pretty sure they call it habit stacking. But habit stacking is basically where you have like this anchor habit, and that's the thing that like maybe starts it. So I don't know, what's an obvious? Getting up out of bed in the morning, right? First thing you do is make the bed. You then start to look at another habit of, I don't know, maybe putting on your shoes because you're going to go for a run, and like breaking them down. And the idea behind it is, and I am oversimplifying it, it's definitely worth going and exploring this and reading it for the listeners, but habit stacking basically means taking an initial habit that then you can build other habits on, and it kind of creates this momentum for you in a way. And so that's something that I've used very effectively to develop routines, right? So a morning routine that suited me at a period in time, right, was getting up. As soon as I got up, stretching. Then I moved into meditating. Then an element of journaling, right? And then I'd go and start the day with having a shower and then going to walk the dog. Now, that's quite a meaty routine at the minute. I don't really have time for that, and I'm just getting on with it. But that's what I mean by habit stacking.
And I suppose in the example that you gave there, and I think it's maybe important to discuss, you didn't start off by stretching an hour a day. And it's very easy to fall into the trap by what we're describing, because you could be like, well, that's easy. That's so hard to do. Well, I'm not going to start stretching and doing meditating because you might have a different expectation. But it sounds like you started doing these things gradually. You didn't just go straight into them. You built them into your day.
That's a really good point to pick up, actually. You're absolutely right. So it didn't start there. In fact, it started with something completely unrelated to that, but another one I used, which was a productivity hack, which was called the 2-minute rule, which was just do 2 minutes. So to your point about breaking it down, let's say you were looking to start stretching. It wasn't around, as you say, I never just jumped straight in and did like 45 minutes to an hour worth of stretching. I just did 5 minutes to start with. That's all it was. And in fact, if you can't even imagine of stretching for 5 minutes, start
just
with 30
seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I
Absolutely.
did the same for meditation. That's actually how I got into meditating originally, in mindfulness practices.
And the way I like to sometimes frame habits, coping skills, things like that, is this idea of learning to ride a bike. When you first learned to ride a bike, someone held you and you had stabilizers on and you were learning gradually. No one stuck you on the Tour de France. This is the exact same thing. Yeah. You've got to start small. Start within your capacity. Start with what is within your ability to do.
We've got to all start small, right? And that is different for different people, you know. But your point about Tour de France, actually, I can guarantee you, if we went and analysed the top 10 performers in that, in fact, probably any rider that did it, right, they would have all started very small. And I think that's something that we all miss in a way.
To learn the bike at some point.
Exactly, right? But you take this with podcasting. So we've been, what are we now? We're January and we started in October, right? If we look in a year's time, the difference of the quality of the podcast from the beginning to where we'll be then, that's going to be momentum. We probably won't notice it week to week ourselves necessarily because we're constantly doing this. But I think that first, and I think it does come into habits because no one likes to suck to start with. Like, no one, do you know what I mean? There's that fear in a way, right? And actually, if you want to build that habit, you've probably got to accept that you're going to suck, right? If you want to build a habit of running, just put on the shoes and walk out the door. That might be the start, right? It might not. That might be the start. Do that for the first 5 days. Then look to build it and just slowly start to scale from there, you know, walk to the end of the road. then the next time run. And just, so I think that's a really good point, breaking it down, and you've got to start somewhere.
A good way of kind of saying that is you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great.
That's really good. Thinking of the inverse to what we've just said, how have you found some ways for yourself to break some of maybe the more negative habits that you've got?
I mean, you already named it with, I've forgotten the author's name, Charles Dingham or something?
I've probably butchered his surname. It might not be Duhigg, so complete apologies if it's not.
It's really Frank Smith. We just make this stuff up.
I know it's definitely Charles Duhigg in terms of spelling it. I just don't know how to pronounce the surname.
But you've already named it. It's looking for alternatives. Looking for exits.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to lead behavioural extinction, is another way of kind of framing that. It's
extinction. No, I just like the word extinction. That's very vivid for people.
We're going to extinguish this behaviour. We're going to make it extinct. We're going to get rid of it. And there's a book called Don't Shoot the Dog. And I've forgotten the psychologist's name that wrote it, but this person basically kind of teaches you how to get rid of or to change behaviours, either in yourself or in kind of other situations, like a dog, for instance. And again, it's looking for different associations with different stimuli. It's looking for alternatives. So if you get your maintenance cycle out at the moment and you drew out kind of what your thoughts, what your feelings, and kind of what your body sensations are and how you acted, the trick lies in that behaviour, how you acted part. So what did I do when this happened? Well, what can I do instead? That's the question you have to begin to ask yourself. And that's how I generally get out of my naughty habits. So the example, I want to stop running around so much. Okay, so I've got that feeling of that restless feeling. To cope with that feeling, I normally go for a run. I maybe make some content. I might kind of try and read 2 books at once. Something else that's a bit scatty. Who knows?
Hold on, listeners. 2 books at once. One in the left hand, one in the right hand, Josh?
Maybe. Well, sometimes in my toes. You know. I know that's a bit crazy, but no. But what I would try and do is go, well, what else can I do?
Yeah.
How can I be comfortable with the sitting and relaxing at the moment? What do I need to get me through this moment? The next, and again, it's starting small. What do I need to get me through the next 2 minutes? What do I need to get me through the next 4 minutes? And sometimes you have to take it even smaller. So that's generally my advice with kind of breaking or leading behavioural extinction.
I love the term behavioural extinction. It's the reason I laugh at it, it's so vivid. It's I completely agree. Some of the other ways that I've looked at it as well is like actually,
we said like again.
I did, didn't I? Oh, I'm going to start ruminating. No,
that's actually so funny.
I've been exposed.
Please continue. No, I was only teasing because we were talking about behavioural extinction. Please.
No, what I was going to say was, and this is people will probably laugh at this, right? But talking of breaking those negative ones, I got to a point when I was studying for my chartership where I was like, I just need to get away from this kind of and all this. And actually, I just needed some accountability. So I made a contract with my mum that she would check in with me. And if I hadn't done the 20 hours a week that I needed to do, I had to pay her £100.
Tough.
Right? But that sounds aggressive, but that, at that time, that would have hurt, right? So actually, by forcing myself to study in that way and realising that there was that penalty from it, that's also something once I become aware if I'm trying to eradicate it. Full disclosure, I failed once and had to pay her £100, and I never failed again after doing that. And
what you did there, if we were to think about that in like behaviourist terms, it's negative reinforcement. So you introduce something, or you had something take something away from you in that situation, and that led to an unpleasant or unpleasurable experience that you wish to avoid. So you went, what's the alternative? What can I do to avoid that? And that's when you hear those terms, positive and negative reinforcement. Negative is something's being taken away. Positive is when something's being given to you. And that's what you're thinking about in these situations when you're going, well, what behaviour have I got at the moment that I want to get rid of or maybe increase?
Yeah, 100%. That's exactly it. And taking away, actually, the other one I had to put the phone out the room. So I just changed the environment. And actually, I think changing your environment is so underrated by people. just simply, you think about it, if you're just sitting on the sofa, right, and you've built that habit of just sitting there scrolling, as soon as you sit down, your body's like, oh, I'm on the sofa, it's time to start scrolling. And I stopped taking my phone in the bed, like to bed. I didn't. That's a bit way to describe it. I think they don't want to move like
Steady.
that. But sitting in bed scrolling, right?
You see how you scrabbled to change that sentence just there? Oh, it's too late. We've got him.
Twice in one episode.
So shifty.
Shifty. But yeah, that's what I did. I just put the phone out of the room. Gone. It's finished.
Yeah.
It's out of the room. And that way I've changed the environment, right? So that's breaking that negative because it was like I had to. And now the phone is back in the room because it's broken the habit, but it's on the other side of the room. And so when the alarm goes off, I physically have to get up and turn it off. Right?
Started another habit.
Mm-hmm.
There's a habit stacking.
It's funny. It's funny when we now talk about this, right? Because I actually suddenly realised how much I reprogrammed. How much, and now I don't even think about it.
System 1 has saved the day. That's what begins to happen. Your brain's very clever, very efficient.
Well, there you go then. If you want to start 2025 off in a strong way, be aware of your habits, decide whether they're serving you, and act intentionally.
The whole conversation reminds me of something I was discussing with someone I knew, and this person was quite a lot older than I was. They're in their 80s. And obviously, he's talking in general when he says this, but he says, realistically in life, you have few responsibilities. You have the things that you do, so your work. You have, and it might be work, it's meaningful occupation. You have your friends and family. You have yourself, and you might pick up some more responsibilities. But it's in that moment when you're picking up responsibilities that you end up letting go of that responsibility to yourself. And in the habits that you form in that moment is part of that letting go of yourself. So remember, you've got a responsibility to yourself with these habits and kind of what you do.